Welcome friends, I'm new to YouTube and I'm so happy you're here. If you enjoy my videos, please leave a comment, and if you think there's something I can improve, let me know. I'll do my best to make it better for you. Hey friends, before we start, I just want to say thank you for being here. If you love real creepy stories, hit that like button and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Tonight, I'm sharing something that happened to me. Something I can't forget. I thought I was safe in my room, alone, but I wasn't. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Take a deep breath, let yourself relax. This is your bedtime story, and it's going to take you somewhere spooky tonight. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the quiet of the house. Moonlight spilled across the floor, painting shadows on the walls that seemed to twist when I blinked. At first, I told myself it was just the old floorboards creaking, just the wind brushing through the curtains. But then I heard it, a soft, slow footstep outside my door. Pause. Another one. Closer. My stomach sank. I whispered to myself, "It's nothing. It's just my imagination." But deep down, I knew I wasn't alone. A cold draft brushed my cheek. My blanket moved slightly, as if something unseen had touched it. And then a whisper, soft but unmistakable. "I'm here." My heart pounded so loudly, I thought the whole house could hear it. Every shadow seemed alive, inching closer. I reached for my phone. Black. Nothing. Silence. And then the whisper again, now closer, almost behind my ear. I forced myself to tiptoe toward the door. The doorknob was icy cold, like ice had formed around it overnight. I whispered to myself, "It's okay. It's just the wind. Nothing is here." But the whisper returned, sharper this time. "I'll see you." I froze. Every shadow in the room seemed to stretch toward me. The blanket on my bed shifted again, gently, like a hand brushing through it. My heart was racing, every instinct screaming to run, but my legs refused to move. I took a slow, shaky breath. "It's just a story. It's just a story." I repeated over and over, trying to calm myself, but deep down, I knew it wasn't a story. Something was in the room with me. Morning light finally crept through my window. Relief washed over me until my eyes fell on my pillow. A folded note, small and precise, in handwriting I couldn't recognize. "See you tonight." Even now, weeks later, I still remember the way the shadows seemed alive, the whispers in the dark, and that icy touch on my blanket. Every creak of the house, every breeze against my skin, reminds me that someone, or something, is still waiting. Guys, what was that? Why did that happen to me? If anyone knows or has experienced something similar, please let me know in the comments. I'll really want to hear your thoughts. When I was a kid, my grandfather used to tell this story only once a year. On the last night of summer, when the air was heavy and the fields outside our old house were turning gold, he would sit by the window with a cup of tea, his hands trembling a little, his eyes on the horizon. He never called it a ghost story. He always said softly, "Some things in this world don't like being forgotten." That line stayed with me, and what happened to him when he was just 19 still gives me chills every time I think about it. It was late evening. The sun was melting behind the hills, turning the whole field orange and quiet. My grandfather and his father had spent the day cutting rice, their hands blistered, backs bent. The air smelled like straw and dust and something sweet from the wildflowers that grew by the pond. They were almost done when his father said, "You finish this row. I'll go ahead and start the fire for supper." He nodded, stayed behind, humming softly to himself. There was something peaceful about being alone in the field, until the crickets stopped. At first, he thought nothing of it, but then, from somewhere deep in the field, he heard it. A faint voice, carried on the breeze, greater than, "Don't leave yet." He turned around, squinting into the golden light. No one was there, just the whispering of the rice stalks and the slow wind brushing past his ears. He laughed nervously. Probably some kid playing, he thought. But when he stood to pack up, the same voice came again, this time closer, greater than, "Stay a little longer." The second voice. He froze. The voice wasn't like a person calling. It didn't sound from one direction. It was everywhere, around him, inside the wind. Soft, gentle, almost pleading. The hair on his arms rose. Still, he spoke out. "Who's there?" No reply, just the long sigh of the field breathing around him. The sun dipped lower. The shadows of the rice stretched like black fingers. He bent down, tied the last bundle, and whispered to himself, "It's getting dark. I need to go." Then, right by his ear, a woman's voice whispered, "It's always dark here." He dropped everything. His heart raced. He looked everywhere. Nothing but golden grass swaying softly. The wind felt strange now. Not cool, not warm, just heavy. Sound cue, low hum of wind turning hollow. He grabbed his sickle and hurried down the narrow path home. But with every step he took, he heard another step behind him. Soft, delayed, like someone walking barefoot through the mud. The lantern on the path. By the time he reached the main path, night had fallen. He lit his small lantern, the kind with an oil wick and a glass cover. The light flickered weakly against the darkness. The sound behind him had stopped. For a while, he thought maybe he had imagined it all. Then, the lantern flame trembled. He shielded it with his hand, but it flickered again. Not from wind, but from a breath. He turned sharply, and for a second, he saw something in the field. A faint glow, low and white, like someone holding a candle far away. He called out, "Is someone there?" The light stopped moving. He took one step forward, and it floated higher. Slowly, he thought it was a person, but as it came closer, he realized it wasn't being carried. It was floating, swaying gently in the air like a living flame. The glow reached the edge of the path and hovered there. In that trembling light, he saw what looked like the faint outline of a face. Soft features, hollow eyes, and then the whisper again, right inside his head, greater than, "Thank you for hearing me." The lantern in his hand shattered. He dropped it and ran, stumbling over stones and roots, until his knees gave out near the fence at home. His father found him at sunrise, lying near the gate, pale as ash. When he tried to speak, his voice cracked. The words wouldn't come. For 3 days, he stayed silent, refusing to sleep near the window. On the 4th day, he finally whispered to his father what had happened. The old man listened quietly, then said something strange. That part of the field used to be a burial ground. Before the flood, long before your time, he told him that during the flood, many graves were washed away. The villagers had never found where all the souls had gone. Maybe they were still there, waiting for someone to listen. 5 years later, my grandfather never went near that field again. But years later, when the government built a new irrigation system, workers found a small wooden bracelet under the soil, tied with rice straw. It was too small for an adult. That night, my grandfather lit a candle and placed it by the window. He said the flame flickered 3 times, then burned steady. The house smelled faintly of wildflowers again, just like that night in the field. He smiled softly when he told me that part, as if remembering an old friend. Some things in this world, he said, they don't want to hurt you. They just don't want to be forgotten. When my grandmother was young, maybe 16, she used to live in a small wooden house at the edge of a forest. It wasn't far from the main village, but back then, even a few 100 meters of dark trees felt like another world. She said nights there were different, quiet, not peaceful. The kind of quiet where you could hear your own heartbeat. She used to study by candlelight near the only window facing the woods, and sometimes, she said, it felt like the trees were listening. The quiet night, one monsoon night, she stayed up late waiting for her father, who hadn't returned from town. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like wet earth and wood smoke. Her little brother had fallen asleep on the floor, curled up under a thin blanket. The candle flickered, and every now and then, a drop of rain slid down the window glass. She said around midnight, she heard it, 3 soft knocks on the window pane. At first, she thought it was just a branch, or maybe a bird, but then came the whisper, so faint it could have been the wind, greater than, please, open. She froze. The voice wasn't threatening. It sounded sad, almost desperate. She leaned closer, the flame trembling beside her hand, and then she saw it, a pale hand against the glass. The hand at the glass. Her heart started racing. She wanted to scream, but something in that voice stopped her. The hand didn't move. It was small, almost delicate, like a child's hand, but longer, the fingers too thin, almost translucent. She whispered, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, slowly, the hand slid down the glass, leaving faint streaks of water, and disappeared. She waited for her father's footsteps, for any sound, but the world outside was completely still. Only the faint drip from the roof broke the silence. After a few minutes, she blew out the candle, pulled the blanket over her brother, and tried to sleep. But the moment she closed her eyes, the knocking came again, this time from the other window. Please, it's cold." The stranger in the rain, terrified, she grabbed the kerosene lamp and lit it. Through the foggy glass, she saw something that made her chest tighten. A young girl standing just outside the window, barefoot, soaked, hair covering her face. Her grandmother said she looked maybe 10 or 11, wearing a thin white dress that clung to her like paper. The girl's lips moved, but no sound came out, only that same whisper floating in the air, not from her mouth. "It's cold." My grandmother's first instinct was to open the door, but something in her stomach screamed not to. She called softly, "Wait, I'll get my father." The girl blinked slowly, then smiled. A small broken smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then she turned and walked away into the forest. But she didn't walk right. Her feet didn't sink into the mud. She just slid, slowly, until she disappeared between the trees. The storm returns. Her father returned an hour later, drenched and pale. She told him everything. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "Did she ask to come in?" She nodded slowly. Her father's eyes darkened. He said quietly, "Good. Never say yes." He then told her something she had never heard before, that many years ago, during a flood, a family from another village had drowned near that forest. A little girl among them was never found. Since then, every few years, someone saw her near the window, always on rainy nights, asking to come inside. And anyone who said yes never woke up the next morning. The next day, her father went outside to check the ground. There were no footprints, but right under the window, there was a faint handprint in the mud, small and pale, like a child's pressed gently into the earth. He built a wooden cross there and lit incense. From that day on, no one ever slept near that window again. But my grandmother said that even years later, whenever it rained and she was alone, she could still hear it. A soft, distant knock 3 times on the glass, followed by a whisper, greater than, "It's cold." Years later, when she told me this story, she looked out our own window and smiled sadly. I asked her if she ever felt afraid thinking about it now. She shook her head. "No," she said, because maybe she wasn't trying to scare anyone. Maybe she just wanted someone to notice she was still there. She always said that ghosts aren't always angry. Some are just lonely. And that's why she always kept a candle near her window on rainy nights. This story is from my friend Maya. She was 22 at the time, and it happened in June 2019 in Seattle, Washington. She had just moved into her first apartment, an old brick building from the 1960s on a quiet street lined with maple trees. She rented a small third-floor studio, a single bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and one large window facing the street. At first, it felt cozy, but at night, something about the creaks felt off. Maya had been unpacking. The air was warm and humid for Seattle, with rain drizzling lightly outside. She was lying on her bed, scrolling through her phone, when she heard a soft creak. She paused, listening carefully. The creaks repeated, rhythmic, like someone pacing slowly. She thought it was the apartment settling. Old wood floors often did that. Then came a soft knock on her ceiling. Knock, pause, knock. She froze, texted me, "I think my upstairs neighbor is moving something," but she said she didn't hear any thumping or sliding, only rhythmic knocks. Her pulse was racing. She held her breath, eyes wide. The whisper around 12:15 a.m. She said she tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she felt a presence, like someone watching from above. The air became heavier, pressing on her chest. Then a whisper, so soft she thought it was her imagination. "Why are you here?" She sat up, scanning the empty apartment. Silence. Then the whispers formed words. "You shouldn't be alone. Come upstairs." Maya told me she felt paralyzed, caught between curiosity and fear. She didn't want to call the landlord. Who knew if he would believe her? She whispered to herself, "It's the building. It's nothing." The night it moved, June 15th, 2019, approximately 1 a.m. She said she was brushing her teeth when she heard something heavy drop upstairs. Not small. A loud thud, followed by pacing footsteps. She tried to call the landlord. No answer. The hallway outside was empty. The apartment above her was vacant, confirmed by management later. Back in her bedroom, she heard the bedroom door creak slowly. Her pulse skyrocketed. She looked up at the ceiling. Footsteps paced directly above her bed, slow, deliberate. The shadow on the wall, approximately 1:10 a.m. In the dim phone light, she saw a shadow sliding along the ceiling, too long to be a person. Thin, smoke-like, stretched unnaturally. Then a whisper right in her ear. "Don't hide." She said she bolted out of the apartment, shoes barely on, phone in hand, trembling, ran to the street, heart racing. Back at her apartment, through the window, she saw the shadow lingering in the corner, not moving, just watching. The next morning, June 16th, 2019, approximately 7 a.m., she returned with the landlord. Apartment above, completely vacant for over 20 years due to a small fire decades ago. No traces of anyone living there. She checked public records. Previous tenants confirmed unit empty since 1995. Nothing explained the noises. Maya said she couldn't sleep in the apartment for a week. Even now, she avoids third-floor apartments. She told me, visibly shaken, "I know it sounds crazy, but I felt it watching me. I could feel its presence above my bed. It wasn't malevolent, but it wasn't human either." The experience changed her. She never felt truly alone in that building again, even after moving out. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to hear the next scary story, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next creepy bedtime tale. Sweet dreams, but maybe keep the lights on.